Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today. This week, State Representative Jennifer Decker, a Republican from Shelby County, as we discuss the 2026 session of the Kentucky General Assembly, which begins this week. It's a budget session, so let's start there.
Okay.
Do you anticipate any further reduction in the income tax rate, even though not all the triggers have been met?
Well, there is a little bit of a debate about that. I've heard two views. Perhaps the most consequential is I heard Senator Stivers say, when we set rules, we should follow them. But I think there is a thought that's been expressed by Representative Jason Nemes, who believes that we should not fail to relieve taxpayers further because there was a federal extension for filing income tax returns this year that we respected. And income tax returns, while they're normally filed in April, were not filed in Kentucky until November. So it to the extent that the benchmarks were missed because of that, what should have been a help to the taxpayers, that would now result in them paying hundreds of millions of dollars more because they were afforded that. There is a lot of, to me, I think that has merit. So we'll see what happens.
So instead of maybe 0.5%, it could be a quarter, or who knows?
Yes, we passed that. I don't think it would, according to not meeting the triggers, we wouldn't go down. Certainly not the 0.5%. Maybe is the argument that the benchmarks weren't met. But we did insert something last year that said, if you don't want to go down 0.5%, but I think that's when benchmarks are met. So it may be that if the benchmarks aren't met, we wouldn't even go down to a lower amount. So that I think is to be seen. I do like sticking to rules. I think those benchmarks have shown such, they help us be prudent when we might not want to be. They hold us accountable. I think I read an article on taxes that said it's rare, and they were commenting on this, for a trigger to not trigger. We even wrote in that even if the triggers work, you have to come back, and the legislature at the first of the year has to say, yes, the triggers are met and we'll do it. So I do like how carefully it is drafted, but I also think that it's putting the rule above it's not the spirit of the rule, that if taxpayers are paying the money later, just not when the benchmark, we'll see.
Bottom line, we'll see.
Yes.
Of course, balancing the budget will be even trickier this year because the state now has more responsibility for costs to Medicaid and to SNAP, what has been known in the past as food stamps. How do you want to handle that?
Well, that will be interesting. I'm not sure the exact amount yet. I think maybe there are people who do, but I was listening to a hearing the other day where that question was asked. What is the exact amount that we're going to get? It's not been revealed to many of us, if anyone knows. But Senator Stivers also made a great point, and I'm quoting him from a briefing that he and leadership in the Senate gave, I think in June or July. But he said, those numbers that have been announced that will be coming back, the numbers that we're going to be short were over a 10-year period. When if you break them down per year, it may not be as onerous as we think. I just don't think we know yet, honestly. And when I've listened to the Medicaid board that's been set up, I think they're grappling with how much it's going to be and how we're going to work on it. It will be top priority, I'm sure, but at this point, I don't think we know enough to make much comment about it.
But you don't expect, as some of those who have predicted, who are perhaps a bit more scared, you don't expect rural hospitals to close.
I think that's where I don't think it was on SNAP benefit. I think it was on that point that it was over a 10-year period. I can tell you that I have one of those hospitals in my district, and I've talked with them. There's no plan to close that. There was a policy group who announced that there were 35 at risk of being closed. Nobody knows where they came up with the list. The hospital told me they weren't consulted about that list, but so it was likely to be closed. They don't have plans to close. I think I know that the one that is in my area is looking very hard at cutting all losses and becoming profitable. So there's no doubt there's an issue there, but I think the hospitals are addressing it. Not one of them came and complained to us about this potential closure and lack of funding. So I think that again we'll have to wait to see, but it will be addressed. It will be taken seriously. I don't think we're not gonna have 35 hospitals close.
One of the priorities of the Kentucky Baptist Convention is for the legislature to relieve churches of having to collect sales tax on some transactions. Where are you on that? And do you anticipate that happening?
Well, I have co-sponsored that bill twice and will again. I think there has been some clarification around it that I run a nonprofit. I run a Christian nonprofit, and I've read the statements that Chairman Petrie, who wrote the bill, has written. And as long as it's for fundraising, as opposed to a charge for a good, it isn't taxed now. So um, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if the churches are not seeing some relief in what I think his advice was meant to give, that if you are fundraising, I think, for example, if you have a church meal and you ask for donations, now you have to let people eat if they don't pay, but I don't think most would not pay. I think you just don't say it's $3.15 tonight. So if it's fundraising, I don't think the law applies. I think one of the problems that the Baptist Convention has is upward basketball.
Exactly.
And I think that one uh, is a little bit harder in that upward basketball, as I understand it, and I've talked to the chairman about it. That's a separate entity that is charging. Is that right?
Well, it's a separate organization, but churches actually charge people to play in that league. So there is a fee to play in that league.
To the extent it's a ministry and it's a donation instead of a charge, I think that, but I think that one gets a little trickier. The overall concept is that if you are competing with others in that industry, other leagues, I guess, and you're charging for membership, not a ministry that's seeking donations, but charging and requiring people to pay. I think the thought is that you would be competing with the industry and therefore taxed. I have a philosophy that the government should not tax churches at all, not only income tax, but sales tax, because it is a ministry. So I'll re-sponsor the bill. I was just offering what I think is the argument on the other side.
Yeah. Part of the issue is that so many of our churches are very small churches,
Yeah.
and they don't have the money or resources to hire accountants or
Yes.
whatever
Oh, yeah.
to tell them whether this is okay or not okay. So I think the idea is it would just be uh, easier and better for churches not to have to worry about that, because if they have to do it, they want to do it.
Oh,
But
yes, they
that
want to
just
be compliant for
exactly,
sure. Hmm.
exactly. So I'm glad you're sponsoring that bill again. So we'll see where it goes. So what are your top budget priorities for this coming session?
Well, from bills that I will file, I have three that will be asking for budget. One I think it's going to be my favorite bill I've ever filed. I think it's going to have the most impact on the state for the long term. And that is a bill that I'm asking for quite, I can't remember, there are 2 years of funding. I think the first one is 49 million. We are proposing to build a KCTCS facility inside the prison gates at North Point in Boyle County.
That's Kentucky Community Technical College.
Yes, yes, yes. It will be the first of its kind in the nation. Michigan has a similar model, but ours is, we think, better, and they have said they wish they had done it this way. So what the concept is that we are providing an education in the form of a trade school, a trade. So we will be offering a whole list of in-demand trades, certifications that will help them have a job. We hope to have a job for every one of them before they leave prison. We are proposing to build this with rooms for interviews weekly. We're putting it in the center of the state so that interested vendors, employers will come there and have interviews. We have a list. The governor, a couple of years ago, I think, maybe a year ago, set up a second chance employer committee. We've met with them. They have lists of employers who want to hire people who've been in jail. So we're working on making that connection. And the reason it's better than the project in Michigan is that we are taking known educators, KCTCS. We're not hiring educators to come into the prison. We are staffing that as by educators. So we believe it will be transformative for our state. In Michigan, they had a 40% recidivism rate before they started this. And at the prisons, they now have 3. At those prisons, it's 12%. When you think that we've learned that in prison, it costs over $40,000 per year to house a prisoner. And then they come back 30, I think we're down to 30 on certain, after 2 years, I think it's still 40 after 3. That is a lot of money we're spending because there is no hope. They've been in prison. They can't be hired. So I think that'll be an exciting bill. And the second year, the cost will be the first year will be the cost of the building. The second year will be implementing the program in the prison. And then because these prisoners will be they can get Pell Grants. So we think it will be funded by a lack of recidivism and the grants from the federal government for education. So the upfront cost we think will equalize and be gone. So I'm excited about that bill. I have another bill that every year I have an election bill. And what we call it is the continuous improvement bill. And we look at issues that arise after each election that we need to tweak. But for the past couple of years, I have included an increase in funding for the county clerks. Their funding has not been changed since 1974. All costs have gone up. So we are talking with the chairman about including that. It was included last year and taken out by the Senate. It passed in the House, but it wasn't a budget year, and we're tweaking it. We've gotten more specific numbers, and we hope that will pass too. And then my final bill that affects the budget is one where I'm asking the state to study all fines and fees that are involved in the criminal justice system and in civil enforcement. Because I don't think Kentucky, like most states, Kentucky has no idea how much we're charging, how much we're collecting, whether we will ever collect it, where does it go? So other states have done this and found, for example, one state found they only collect 5% of all fines and fees. And yet they seek collection for I call it sometimes a debt sentence where it goes with you. You can be reincarcerated because of debt that you perhaps can never pay. We don't know what the results are going to be, But I think to make good sound public policy, a state needs to know what they're charging, where they're charging it. Are we funding government functions through individual debt? Is it a user fee? What do we think about it? I think we need to see what we're doing. And so we're going to use Kentucky stats for that. They tell me there'll be very little cost, but that's another request I'll have.
Ambitious agenda. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Turning to social issues, of course, justice is a social issue, but more kind of
Yeah.
traditional social issues. You're pro-life.
Oh,
Will there,
yes.
will there be any attempt to clamp down on chemical abortion? What can be done to stop the flow of abortion pills into our state?
Well, we attempted that before. It seems as though, we need to enforce the law. It is already illegal to send those into the state. I know that will be brought up again, and I'm anxious to hear it. I am a member of the Pro-Life Caucus. I didn't get to go to the last meeting, so I'm not as up on that agenda, but I am certain we work closely with Right to Life. That is a major issue, and there will be proposals on that for sure.
You led the way in passing a couple of years ago, House Bill 150
Mhm.
that dealt with the
It
transgender
ended up
issue.
being Senate bill, yes.
Senate bill, right,
That's
Senate Bill 150 on the transgender issue,
yes.
banning transgender procedures on minors and protecting restrooms, things like that in public schools. Is there more you'd like to see done on that?
Well, we keep looking at that issue. As I think you know, we last year found that it wasn't for children. It was transgender surgery being done in prisons at the taxpayer expense. So the legislature believes that is an invalid expense for the state at any level. Uh, I know that at some point, and this is being looked at, but whether state insurance pays for that is another issue. It was addressed at one time, but it got taken out right at the end before the bill passed. So I think wherever we find taxpayer dollars, especially for children, that's you lose your license if you are doing that kind of services for children in Kentucky. But even for adults, you're free to do it, but the taxpayers should not have to pay it. And that's what we will be careful to monitor.
There's been some talk of extending the protection of restrooms to those of biological sex from public schools to other public spaces. Do you expect something like that?
I haven't heard that discussed.
For example, the state capitol, although it's
Yes,
closed now, but still.
that may well be because last year at the very end of session, somewhat famously, a very tall man came in a white see-through um, evening gown and was headed into the women's restroom where little children were going. And one of our House members, Bill Wesley, who's now running for Congress, I think he planned to file that bill until he won't be back now because he's running for Congress. He had to give up his seat, but I think there was great interest at that time. So I suspect that will be filed again, mainly to protect children.
Do you expect any effort, as some states and countries have done, to limit access by young people to social media?
That's an interesting topic. We did limit access on to pornography, clearly, but parents are actually asking for that. And these are parents who have contacted me about it, whom I never would have thought that of, but I think it's becoming clear to all of us that the mental health of our children are suffering. The mental health is suffering because of social media. So again, I don't know someone filing that, but it will not surprise me. And I think it is an extension of what we've already seen where we're trying to age verify. It could be that. We've stopped cell phone use in the schools. So we'll see where that goes. I think it is something that's being asked for.
You voted against medical marijuana, as
I
I
did.
recall. Dispensaries are starting to open now. Do you have any concerns as these places begin to open?
Well, what I really regretted and still regret and do have concerns about is that I think it was that same year or maybe the year before, where we had begun a study of the long-term effects of marijuana use, medical marijuana, whatever, THC, on the human body. So we were studying that with the thought that if there was data, medical data, it's not that we don't want people to have medicines that it's effective, but I have a friend who's a doctor who I consulted during that time. I asked him what he thought about it. He said, "Well, Jennifer, I have taken an oath to do no harm, and without more data, I don't know that I would be doing no harm." So I would like to see more data. I think if it's true that it's effective and it has no long-term harm, I think that's where I am stuck on it. I know some people say it is a gateway to recreational marijuana. I understand slippery slopes, and I worry about that. I think it would be a grave mistake. But I also hate to see people suffer if there is something effective that would help. At this point, I could not vote for it because I've not seen any such thing. So I do worry about it.
Running out of time, but we talked about your budget priorities. Otherwise, what are your other legislative priorities this session?
Well, oh, I bills that I'm filing. Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking? Uh,
exactly.
well, at this point, I do have another bill that I've filed several times. Well, once before, but bills on the topic is the Convention of States. Some people worry that if we had there has to be a certain number of states that call for the convention. It's a few. It's still quite a few short, but uh, I trust the founders of our nation. They set up Article 5,
You talk about
uh,
a constitutional
a
convention.
constitutional convention, Article 5 convention. And so I trust that they were wise enough to do it. I think the threats of a runaway convention have not been proven true when there have been conventions. But I guess what I'm talking about filing this year, what I am going to file, is before we vote on whether to call a convention. I think we need in place some safeguards, one of which is to hold the delegates accountable who go there to guard against a runaway convention. If you have real ramifications for what would happen if they went there and did something other than what the state asked them to do and what the parameters of the convention were, I think that would help people then be able to vote to have a convention where we look at some of the problems with the federal government that really need to be addressed. So I will be filing that again.
Is there serious talk about calling a constitutional convention to amend
Well,
the Constitution or change it?
there is a movement that the Convention of States. I wish that I had thought about talking about this. I think you need something like 32 or 35. There's still quite a few away, but no, it has been a movement for some time. I would say honestly that of the letters I have received since I've been in the House, at the top is people writing to ask me to support a convention of states.
Huh, interesting.
One year we had a hearing on that topic at the state fair when we often have hearings there. I've never seen a crowd like that of people in favor of the Convention of States. So yes, there's a movement to have a balanced budget. There is also a movement to have a convention just on the topic of term limits. This convention in Article 5 is looking at requiring a fiscal sanity. So it's a big movement. I'm not sure it will be heard in Kentucky. I think there are people who worry about it, but I think it's getting closer. And I think my bill would put people more at ease. And I know of some important people in the legislature who are in favor of it. So I want to see that safeguard be put in place.
Let's end with this. It's going to be a different session this year and for the next few years because the Capitol is closed. You're meeting in a
Yes.
temporary chamber,
Yes.
no public access. How can people keep up with what you're doing and communicate with you with no rotunda to hold rallies and no gallery for people to watch the proceedings?
Well, there will be live streaming. There will be a room for people to, it will mimic the gallery. You won't be in the same proximity as the legislators. Um, there will be the press room. Plus, I think there's one seat in maybe both chambers for press. I'm not certain of that. I haven't taken the final tour, but there will be real-time access to information. It will feel different for sure. The committee hearings will be the same. There won't be limited access there. So I think people who love the live interaction and being in the gallery will be very disappointed. And I'm sad that that will be, I think that's a part of our democratic representative government that I think there is something great about being right there in it. But I think we've accommodated, or the planners have accommodated that to the extent it really could be due to the circumstances.
And of course, your constituents can contact you, the usual
Oh,
means
yes.
as always.
Yes, absolutely. And they can attend committee meetings, and our offices are not closed. So we will have meetings sometimes on a lot of days it'll be 15 minutes at a time. So the whole day will be cut into we will have a lot of meetings, yes, face to face.
Well, have a good session. Enjoy as much as you can. It gets kind of crazy, especially toward the end, but we pray it'll be a productive one for the people of Kentucky.
Thank you. And I pray that the Baptist Convention will be active and um, in asserting the values that we share. I think we're in an odd time, we're in an exciting time in our history where it appears we could even have a spiritual revival, and that it will affect the state for the better. So I'm excited to be here at this time. There are some threats now that weren't there before. Violence has occurred. I think we're in a spiritual battle, but I appreciate all that the convention does to keep people aware of what goes on.
And we'll be talking to you throughout the session, I'm sure. Thank you, Representative
Thank you,
Decker.
Lawrence. Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
You can read all about what's going on in Frankfort on KentuckyToday.com. And while you're there, sign up for the morning briefing, our daily news digest email. And for more information about the Kentucky Baptist Convention and the cooperative program that makes this podcast possible, go to kybaptist.org. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today podcast.